Hey, all. Today we're going to continue talking about writing linear equations. In the last lesson, we had linear equations, and we wanted to write linear equations, and we were given the slope, and we were given 1 point that line went through. And we're going to take that a step further here, and I'm just going to give you 2 points that I want my line to go through. So if I look at this first one, I don't actually know if it's positive or negative or how it looks, but I'm just going to do a little sketch. And I've given you 2 coordinates of 2 points that this line passes through, and we want to write the equation of that line. And so, of course, the thing that we should always start with is the equation of a line. The 2 things that I need to know are the slope and the intercept. So last time we were given the slope and we used the point and the slope and we found an intercept. So we have one extra step here. The first thing we need to do now is find the slope. And so from previous lessons, we know that if we subtract the y values on top and on the bottom, we subtract the x values, we can find the slope of that line. And so I like to label my points x, y, x, y. So when I'm subtracting the y values, I'm doing -1, subtract +2, and then my x values is +3, subtract -4. And so I'm getting my slope. On top, I get -3. On the bottom, I get +7. So now we have the slope of our line, and we actually have 2 points that it goes through, so we can pick one. I'm just going to always pick the first one just to be consistent. And now we can actually do the same procedure that we did in the last lesson. We can take the x value and the y value and plug them in. So my y value is -1. And we can also use our slope to plug in. So we know m is -3 over 7, and our x value is +3. And we can do some multiplying. You can use Desmos. We'll get -9 over 7. It's okay, that's a fraction. We're going to want to move this fraction over. And when we move it over, it's going to turn into addition. So I'm going to end up with -1 plus 9 over 7. And you can use Desmos to help you do that subtraction if you struggle a little bit with adding, subtracting numbers and fractions. We are going to get +2 over 7 here, though, if we subtract, and that is our y-intercept. Remember, we're not stopping there. We have our slope. Now we have our y-intercept. We want to write the equation of a line. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those 2 values and plug it back into that slope-intercept form of a line. Remember, the equation of a line is always going to have a y and an x in it. We plug our slope -3 over 7 in. We're going to plug our +2 over 7 for our intercept. And that is the equation of our line. Even though it looks kind of messy because there's 2 fractions, that is an appropriate equation of a line, and the equation of the line that passes through these 2 points. And in fact, I did sketch this line incorrectly. Since it has a negative slope, it would have looked like this, but that's okay. It gave us an idea of what was happening here. We have 2 points that the line is going through, and we wanted to write the equation. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I want to find the slope of this line. Every time I find the slope, I'm going to write the formula, and the more I do that, I'm going to commit that formula to memory. I like to label my x and y. So when I subtract my y's, I'm doing 1, subtract -5, and I'm doing My x is 5, subtract -1. So on top, I get 6. On the bottom, I get 6. And so actually the slope of this line is 1. And again, I have 2 points that I can use to use my slope and my point to find my y-intercept, but I'm just going to be consistent and use the first point every time. If you want to use the second point every time, that's totally okay. So I'm going to start with my equation of the line. I'm going to plug in what I know. I chose my first point that this line goes through, so my y is 1. We just calculated the slope. The slope is 1. My x value is 5 from my first point that I have circled up here. And I'm solving for b. So 1 times 5 is 5. When I bring this 5 over, it's going to subtract. So we're going to have 1 minus 5. And we are going to get our y-intercept, our b, to be -4. Again, we're not stopping there. We have found our slope. We have found our y-intercept. We want to know what is the equation of this line. So we're going to plug our slope and intercept back in to y equals mx plus b and get y equals 1x minus 4. Oops. Sorry about that. So I'm going to do a couple more just to keep reinforcing this. If you feel like you want to test yourself and pause right now and try one on your own, that's a good idea. If not, stay with me. You should probably listen first and then pause and write the stuff down. But we are finding the slope first. When I subtract my y's, I do -5, subtract -4. My x's, I have +5, subtract 1. I get a slope here of -1 over 4. I'm going to use my equation of a line to try and find the intercept so that I can finish by building an actual equation. I'm going to use my first point like I have been to stay consistent. My y value is -5 for that one. My slope I just found to be -1 over 4. And my x value up here is 5. This multiplication is going to give me -5 over 4. Then I'm going to move this over and it's going to become addition. Again, you can use Desmos to help you out. So we are going to get -3 4/5, which is -19 over. Actually, let me pause here. You should check on Desmos here. I'm trying to do it without Desmos. Okay, I figured it out. Hopefully you did too. -15 over 4. It might look messy. That's okay. We're just going to use that value. It's the right value, and we are going to plug that in. So we want to plug in our intercept. We want to plug in our slope into our y equals mx plus b. We're not going to plug any y or x values in now. We just want the equation of the line. So -1/4 x minus 15 over 4. And one more time for good measure, we are finding slope first, subtracting our y's, subtracting our x's. So on top, we get 1 minus -1. On the bottom, we get -1 minus 0. So on top, we get 2. On the bottom, we get -1. So we can just call this -2. I'm going to stay consistent, use my first coordinate. My y value in this coordinate is 1. My slope is -2. My x value in this coordinate is -1. -2 times -1 gives us +2. We're going to move this one over. It's going to become -2. It's changing from addition to subtraction. And we are going to get our intercept to be -1. One final time. We are not stopping there. We are taking our slope, we are taking our intercept, and we are plugging them back in where they belong to y equals mx plus b. Our final answer is going to have a y in it. It's going to have a slope of -2. It's going to have an x in it, and it's going to have an intercept of -1. So before you move on to the you-dos, please do ask if you need some clarification on this process. We are finding slope, then we are finding the intercept, and then we are plugging them into the slope-intercept form of a line to get our final equation. I have 2 you-dos for you. Follow that process. Step 1, find the slope using the slope formula. Step 2, you're going to use your slope and 1 point, just like we did in the last lesson. And you are going to then find b, the y-intercept. And then you are going to plug the slope and the y-intercept into our equation of a line so that you have an equation that you know goes to those 2 points. So pause here, try these 2, and then press play for the answers. So check your answers here. If you got one or both of them wrong, go ahead and raise your hand. Hopefully you wrote down your work so that I can help you find your mistake. If you've got your questions answered or you got them both right, please move on and do the practice problems. You can always do the practice problems on paper first before you enter them into Edpuzzle. And if you want me to check to see if there are mistakes, we can do that before you enter them into Edpuzzle, before you put those answers in and get the grade for the assignment. So there's no problem working through the mistakes or finding mistakes before you enter your answers in. Take your time on these and good luck.